I'm pleased to rise to say a few words on Bill 18. We heard from a number of Canadians on this, and I listened to the many speeches that we've heard along the way, and especially today. My comments will be brief in three parts. I will speak first about the purpose of the bill, then about the role of the CRTC in overseeing the bill, and a few comments on the larger context. Les objectifs.
The objectives. Bill C-18 aims to set a level playing field for digital platforms, and to ensure fair and equitable remuneration for Canadian news outlets. It creates a new legislative and regulatory framework. The bill expands the mandate and the power of the CRTC.
Balances the power dynamics in the digital news marketplace in order to ensure fair compensation for Canadian media outlets and journalists. It creates a new legislative regulatory framework to enable digital news intermediaries such as Google and Facebook to negotiate agreements. This is the core of the bill, negotiate agreements with Canadian media to authorize them, to authorize them to disseminate Canadian media content in their platforms. The bill also creatively sets up a process that enables smaller media outlets to bargain collectively. It gives the CRTC responsibility for the necessary regulations, to make the necessary regulations and the code of content for governing bargaining between digital news and intermediaries and news business. It also mandates the CRTC determine whether agreements are outside the bargaining process, meeting the conditions for exemptions. A few comments about the CRTC in relation to this bill. I have addressed the role of the CRTC in general a couple of times relating to this bill in the Chamber, and I don't want to be too repetitive, but just to summarize a couple of points that are made in criticism of the CRTC and share with you my perspectives given my experience with that agency. The CRTC is an arm's-length agency which has several acts which it oversees or implements and does so rather diligently, sometimes standing up to the Cabinet and the Governor and Council when they disagree with them. While always appointed by the Federal Cabinet, the process of selecting commissioners is open, transparent, and people have to apply. Once they are appointed, they have to avoid interaction with ministers and parliamentarians and must do so quite diligently. I should tell you, when I was appointed, the Riot Act on this matter was read to me by the Director of Appointments. There were a few MPs that I knew of different parties who I didn't see for 6 years, and literally at the end of that 6 years came out, met them, and found their kids had grown up over 6 years. They'd gotten older and grayer, and it was like having been in jail for 6 years. There were a whole lot of people I literally had no contact with whatsoever for those 6 years. It has been said that the CRTC can designate parties on a whim. Well, let me tell you, the CRTC does not and cannot do whim. It is incapable of doing will by design. I had a colleague while I was there who tried very hard to have the Commission rule on certain issues from the bench. He tried throughout his time there and was not successful. The process is always thoughtful, and they just don't do things at the drop of a hat, for better or for worse. The CRTC always does extensive consultations before finalizing its regulations through a process often that has 2 rounds of negotiations. Lastly, the CRTC, in my view, is well equipped to take on this responsibility as it does regulate broadcasting, which includes broadcasting news. It therefore will be expanding its purview and looking at the print news and the online news, and in that sense, those are things that it has to learn, but they certainly have the base in place. So let me just address the larger context briefly. So here we are in this historic spring of 2023. It needs a name. I recall the Arab Spring, but I think the AI Spring of 2023 is a really interesting time. This is the time when artificial intelligence has taken over the online world and possibly taken over the world. The world just changed with the arrival of ChatGPT and other generative AI, and in the context of a rapidly growing polarized world and a polarized Canadian society and a polarizing society elsewhere, this kind of bill becomes all the more important. Are we defending failing or dinosaur media with this bill? Maybe, maybe not. But if we are, we do need to do everything we can to save the free, balanced, and legitimate media that is generally balanced and edited, rather than only having all our news being reduced to individualized social media, which we know is increasingly biased, myopic, and unreliable. There are, as been mentioned, many new and developing online media who do carry a lot of the good values of being balanced and edited as the traditional media, but they are generally small and struggling. Until such time that they are strong enough to have those same broad, edited, and balanced nature, I think it is important that we do what we can to help the traditional media. The online world often drives Canadians into silos rather than bringing people together, creating Canadian discussion and dialogue and debate that is fair and respectful. While the web giants are threatening consequences in this collision of democratically elected governments versus multilateral corporations, it is vital that democracy stands firm. They, in fact, make this point, the web giants, in fact, make this very point very well as to why we need this bill. This is about our harmonious, democratic society slipping away into a wild west of disintegration of our society. For these reasons, I believe strongly we need to do whatever we can to save and grow traditional media, print, broadcast, and online. This is one step along the way of helping a free and fair media and in securing our democracy, which is more fragile than it has been in many decades. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Miville-Deschênes. Senator Housakos, do you have a question?
We're short of time.
No, you're not.
There's one quick question, sure.
One quick question, Senator Housakos.
A compliment when I get a Housakos question. So.
I appreciate that. I'm glad you find it such. It's a simple question. The government says they're so committed on helping print media and helping diverse local, regional media. Can you explain to me why the government then that spends about $140 million a year in media buy in all their government agencies, why they spend only maximum 2.5% on ethnic media and local media, and the rest of the budget goes on large, giant broadcasters in Canada?
Senator Cardozo.
I don't make those budgets, but I don't disagree with you at all. I think what we're trying to do here is to help this media, to help. One of the things that you and I think, asked a number of people who appeared before us is what was going to happen for the small media, the ethnic media, and so forth. One of the things that gave me most assurance was our witnesses from Australia, who said that, in fact, the small media got disproportionately more resources than the big media, and that gives me some assurance. It's certainly an issue that we'll follow, and I think that it's an important issue that was addressed extensively in our hearings. Thank you.